Stuxnet. This wasn't just another virus floating around the internet, it was a precision-guided missile written in code. Stuxnet secretly slipped into Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, not through the internet, but likely through an infected USB drive carried by an unsuspecting worker. Once inside, it targeted the Siemens industrial control systems that operated uranium centrifuges. And here's the genius part. It didn't just crash the machines, it manipulated them in a way operators couldn't see. The centrifuges would speed up, slow down, spin erratically, until the delicate equipment literally tore itself apart. Meanwhile, the monitoring software fed back perfectly normal readings, so engineers thought everything was fine. By the time Iran realized what had happened, roughly 1,000 centrifuges had been destroyed. For the first time in history, malware had crossed into the physical world and caused real-world damage to critical infrastructure. It was like discovering your thermostat could secretly explode your boiler while still showing the right temperature on the screen. Stuxnet marked the beginning of cyber operations not just as espionage, but as an actual weapon of war, proof that code could take down machines in the same way bombs could.
Aurora. The attackers went after something more valuable than money: source code and access to private Gmail accounts of human rights activists. The technique was sleek. Hackers sent malicious links that took advantage of a flaw in Internet Explorer. Once a victim clicked, the attackers got a foothold inside corporate networks. Google was one of the biggest names hit, but so were Adobe, Yahoo, and dozens of others. The real prize wasn't just intellectual property. It was the ability to spy on voices critical of Beijing. What shocked the tech world wasn't just the scale, but Google's unusual response. They went public, openly accusing China of being behind the attack, and even threatening to pull their operations out of the country. That move was bold, because most corporations at the time quietly dealt with breaches behind closed doors, afraid of reputational damage. Aurora flipped the script. It forced big companies to start admitting that cyber intrusions weren't just minor IT issues, they were geopolitical events. If your Gmail account today warns you about government-backed attackers, that's a direct legacy of Aurora. It set the precedent that global politics and your everyday inbox were now linked by invisible code.
BlackEnergy. This attack made history as the first confirmed blackout caused by hackers. In late December, right before Christmas, operators at Ukrainian power companies watched their computer screens suddenly move on their own, mouse cursors clicking through control panels as if an invisible hand had taken over. Substations began to shut down, and within minutes, hundreds of thousands of people across Ukraine lost electricity. The attackers weren't kids pranking the grid, they were professionals using a customized version of the BlackEnergy malware. It wasn't just about turning off lights. By hitting power infrastructure in the dead of winter, the hackers sent a chilling message: your basic survival systems are not safe. What made it scarier was the coordination. Alongside the malware, phone lines at customer support centers were flooded with fake calls, so real outages couldn't be reported quickly. It was a textbook hybrid operation, digital sabotage paired with real-world disruption. For Ukraine, this was a warning shot. For the rest of the world, it was proof that cyber war could literally pull the plug on modern life.
OPM Hack. This wasn't some random leak of passwords or credit cards. It was the motherlode of sensitive personal details. The OPM kept security clearance records, fingerprints, background checks, family ties, even records of past drug use or financial troubles. All the messy, private details you'd rather no one know. With that database in hand, China didn't just gain a list of US government employees, they gained a spy recruiter's dream tool. If you know which official has gambling debt, which one has a troubled marriage, or which one has foreign relatives, you know exactly where the pressure points are. Imagine trying to safeguard national secrets while your adversary has the cheat sheet to your entire intelligence community's vulnerabilities. It was such a massive breach that some US officials quietly admitted it couldn't be undone. The data would remain useful to China for decades. The OPM hack showed that cyber war isn't always about shutting down systems or stealing money. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon is information that can be quietly weaponized later.
Sony Pictures hack. It started with a chilling image on every employee's screen, a grinning red skeleton and the words "hacked by #GOP. Within days, private emails, unreleased films, and salary records flooded the internet. Executives were exposed gossiping about celebrities. Sensitive employee medical records became public. But the real reason behind the attack was geopolitical. Sony had produced The Interview, a comedy where actors plot to assassinate Kim Jong-un. North Korea demanded the film be pulled, and when Sony refused, hackers hackers unleashed chaos. The breach wasn't just embarrassing, it paralyzed Sony's internal systems, shutting down email, locking workstations, and forcing staff to use pen and paper to communicate. The FBI later pinned the attack on Pyongyang, making it one of the first times a state used hacking to censor free speech beyond its own borders. For Hollywood, it was a nightmare. For the world, it was a reminder that even a comedy movie could trigger an international cyber war.
NotPetya. It started in Ukraine, disguised as a routine update for tax software. Companies installed it, thinking they were just staying compliant. Instead, the malware spread like wildfire, locking up machines and wiping data beyond recovery. But it didn't stop at Ukraine's borders. Maersk, the global shipping giant, had to shut down ports worldwide. FedEx lost hundreds of millions. Pharmaceutical factories went offline. Even radiation monitoring systems at Chernobyl stopped working for days. NotPetya looked like ransomware. It displayed a message demanding Bitcoin, but in reality, the code made recovery impossible. This wasn't about money. It was sabotage disguised as crime. By the time it was over, losses were estimated at over $10 billion. Governments traced it back to Russian military hackers. What stood out wasn't just the damage, but the collateral victims. Businesses and hospitals with no stake in the Russia-Ukraine conflict found themselves crippled overnight. NotPetya showed that digital weapons, once unleashed, don't respect borders. They burn everything they touch. Bangladesh Bank Heist. Hackers infiltrated the Bangladesh Central Bank's network and quietly monitored how it used the SWIFT system, the global messaging network banks rely on to move money. Once they understood the process, they struck. Fake transfer requests were sent to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, directing funds to accounts in the Philippines and Sri Lanka. In total, they attempted to steal $951 million. A typo, writing Shalika Foundation instead of Shalika Foundation, caused one transaction to be flagged, halting the full heist. Even so, they escaped with $81 million, much of it laundered through Manila casinos. The case exposed just how fragile global finance could be. Here was a central bank, supposedly one of the most secure institutions in the world, breached through little more than phishing and poor network defenses. Investigators traced the attack back to North Korea's Lazarus Group, the same hackers later tied to WannaCry and cryptocurrency thefts. Instead of missiles, Pyongyang was funding its regime through bank robberies carried out with keyboards.
SolarWinds. The attackers breached SolarWinds, a Texas-based company that provided IT monitoring tools to thousands of clients worldwide. They didn't attack the targets directly. Instead, they slipped malicious code into routine software updates. When customers, ranging from Microsoft to the Pentagon, downloaded the update, they unknowingly installed a backdoor. For months, the hackers quietly roamed networks, collecting emails and data, staying invisible. It was one of the most sophisticated espionage campaigns ever uncovered, affecting around 18,000 organizations. What made it terrifying wasn't just the scale, but the patience. The attackers waited, selected their targets, and blended in with normal traffic so well that detection took nearly a year. By the time it was exposed, the damage was already done. Sensitive communications and government secrets were likely in Russian hands. No fanfare, no fireworks, quietly enough to send shockwaves across the US. Done watching? If you like this video, hit subscribe for more cool stuff.